Hello, everyone. This is Raphael.
I'm Lauren.
We're the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, a talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. We are joined today by another returning guest, the voice actress formerly known as Scuffle, Sophie van Oers. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since we've got to catch up. I understand you have some interesting news you're going to be announcing here. And oh man, we have so many things have changed in the 1 year since we last spoke. So I'm sure there will be no shortage of interesting conversation here. Although,
yeah.
So to just address the elephant in the room right at the top of the show, though, obviously I just introduced you by your real name. You've undergone a bit of a rebranding since the last time you're on the podcast. I say a bit of a rebranding, right. A pretty big rebranding. So I was wondering, like, what was kind of behind that? Because as somebody who has undergone that transition myself and remembers doing so at one point of going from like screen names to using my real name a lot online.
Yeah, so the main reason why I decided to change my name from the username to my real name and show my face is because I've been talking a lot with other voice actors and other people, and I've understood that sometimes casting directors and also other people, they generally tend to think it's more professional if you show your name and your face instead of going by a online username. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I started going by an online username is because I just wanted to try voice acting out and kind of have this privacy shield, if you know what I mean, so that I suppose nobody really knew what I was doing and I was just free to experiment and do what I wanted. But also, because of the news I'm about to share with you, I was doing some preparation for that, which was why I did the rebrand, because I figured it would be a lot nicer to be known as Sophie van Oers and show my face so that, you know, people really have a feeling behind who's running that account or like who is that voice.
Yeah, so, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I know that could be particularly important in all parts of the entertainment industry, but especially as a performer. And of course, I guess there are always options too. I've noticed that, you know, people take different approaches into like how they can maintain some level of that anonymity. Of course, like everyone's always in control of how much they share. Some people use a stage name that sounds like a real name, but isn't actually their name. You know, my wife, for example, she's an actress as well. We got married since the last time we spoke in January of this year. We tied the knot. I moved halfway across the country. That's been a huge transition. A lot to unpack there. But she has my last name now. But, you know, professionally, she still goes by her maiden name just because it sounds way cooler. Yeah. Like it's way cooler. Yeah, her maiden it is legitimately way cooler. Her birth name is Haley House, which is such a perfect stage name, and because it's like it's short, it's easy to remember, it's super easy to spell, and it's an alliteration. It's alliterative. And so I was like, oh my goodness, I would kill you if you stopped going by that in your credits. Like, it's such perfect branding. Yeah. And then I remember totally when you announced she was next to me when I saw the social media post of you announcing your whole rebranding going on. I was like, oh, look, one of my good voice actor friends is, going by their real name now and all their credits. And she was like, wait, what's her real name? And I wasn't sure if I was pronouncing it correctly. Apparently I was, but it was Sophie van Oers. And she was like, why hasn't she been going by that this whole time? That's such a good name. Oh, like fair. It is a really cool name. I mean, it is. You've got that cool Nordic sounding name.
Yeah. Sometimes people still have trouble with like spelling it, or when I tell people. Yeah, like when I tell people the name, even just here in my own country, they don't fully hear what I try to say, and then they spell it wrong or something. But it's fine. I've just learned to, like, whenever I introduce myself, I spell my last name real quick, and then we're all good.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I bet you're going to get really practiced at that. Yeah. I mean, even for me, I guess, because, I was going by, like, all sorts of online monikers for the longest of times, because I've been creating online for a pretty long time, since I was very, very young. And I think it was really when I started getting into my late teens / early 20s that I really started using my IRL name more, because it was the online monikers were hard to manage. There was all sorts of different ones you could use, and depending on how your tastes and your mindset changes over time, you become detached or attached to new ones. And I realized that it's just my real name was just something that was unchanging, and something that at least I had no intentions of changing, and something that is a lot easier and consistent to manage, and kind of represented, I guess, more for me a chapter also of just being more, I guess, myself in my online spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree. It also makes you feel a little bit more to me, it gives me the feeling that I'm a bit more of an adult. I mean, I'm 23 years old, so I am an adult.
Right.
But going by that username was a username that I used from when I was 11 years old to play games.
Yeah.
And now I feel it did also help that, I had a username, because apparently there are a lot of people in this world called Sophie van Oers.
Oh, really?
So,
oh, really?
Yeah. If you Google or if you go on Twitter, there's so many usernames or so many profiles with Sophie van Oers on it. So still, the tag that I have is unique, and I was previously known to use that name, so people could still find me easily. So that was also why it was a really easy change to just change the display name, I suppose, so that people can kind of get more used to it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just gonna say what you were talking about earlier. You're saying your name wasn't gonna change anytime soon. It was which is funny. That's the opposite of why I switched to my real name, is because that's when I legally changed my name.
That is true. You do, the name you go by now is not your birth name, and that was
well, in a way, it was it's close to my original birth middle name, and I swapped my middle and first names, and that was when I realized because that was more of my identity, was that was the name that I had chosen. So it was also the name that I chose to go by online. So it just helped to make that transition where now that I have this name, which is mine, I can now use that as my username and my display name. So it all just kind of flowed together. And it added an extra Y in there to be fancy, but it's still basically my name.
Yeah, we've gone through all sorts of name changing dilemmas here.
And really quickly, about the picture that I posted with it. My boyfriend actually took that picture.
Really? I was going to say, it was a very impressive headshot. I very much liked it. As somebody who does some photography myself, I was that was very nicely done. So shout outs to him.
Yeah, definitely. We basically, his, a family member of his has his own photography company and has his own cameras and stuff. And my boyfriend is really interested in going into photography more. So we were like, you know what? Let's just go outside, go find a nice place to shoot some shots and see what happens. And then that picture came and I was like, wow. Yeah, that is Sophie van Oers, the voice actress. we got to use that one.
We found her.
Yes.
There she is.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, that's a really handy skill to have in a partner. Which feels
definitely,
which is interesting for me to say and for you to say. Because I'm the photography.
Wait, is everybody here a photographer or photographer related? My partner does photography as well, so.
And for me, I'm the photographer.
She does all my all my headshots now.
I did my wife's headshots too, so I think photographer partners are just the way to go. This is clearly,
it really is.
It's a very exploitable resource.
If you're going to become an artist, get yourself a photographer partner. That's just how it is.
Or be the photographer partner.
You also just feel a lot more comfortable when it's your partner going hey, smile, hey, let's do this, let's do that, instead of being across from a professional and you're kind of nervous and you're what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, for sure. Because photography is very interesting. I've learned. I mean, it's kind of the same thing in filmmaking, because a large component of filmmaking is photography, but it's one of those crafts that is weirdly personal, and it's something that directing.
Well, it's very intimate.
Yeah, it's very intimate. Directing a model, just like directing a live action actor, right, requires a lot of that kind of trust and intimacy and comfort to be able to like give direction and to have people follow where that vision is going. And I know like trained performers, do a lot to like train that instinct to be able to follow that and to be able to like have those barriers at least controlled. And I know, but for like an untrained performer, I know that could be very different and difficult going into like a photography shoot with a professional and just like, and then that becomes like a whole part of their process is how do I get my subject comfortable and, able to follow direction well. The one experience I've had recently with a professional photographer was when, I guess a couple, there was at our wedding and then at our engagement shoot. Our engagement shoot was with Julie Floro, who's a great fantasy photographer from Pennsylvania. She, that was really like my first big shoot though, with a professional photographer. My wife has done a lot of modeling. She's done a lot more, but so like, I had a bit of those kind of nerves going into it, but she did such a good job of making her subjects comfortable. And I'd read a lot of her work and a lot of her posts, that is a big part of what she does. And she's definitely very good at it. She just has like this, she sets this atmosphere, which is very helpful for doing fantasy style shoots, which is what she does, of playfulness, right? Where it's just like, she makes it very, very fun and playful. And it's like just being like, for that hour that she has you're just like in this make-believe fantasy world. And it's amazing. I couldn't have asked for better engagement shoot photos.
It sounds like it was a real like experience. She made everything like just feel as if you're stepping into a different world for a second. Oh
yeah, for sure. One of the awesome things she did to that was she actually had a Bluetooth speaker that she would bring with her and play like this epic fantasy music while we're doing the shoot.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That's so cool.
Just gets you in the mindset.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen the photos of his engagement set, they're fantastic. They're on his Instagram.
Yes, they are. They're on my Instagram. Yeah, you can go look back at those. They were pretty awesome. Julie knocked it out of the ball.
They're freaking cool. They're really awesome. Yeah.
I'll check them out.
To address other elephants in the room, without further ado, we should probably find out what that announcement is you've been holding out on.
The big announcement is?
I've been in suspense for a while, ever since you told us that you had something to tell us.
Oh, yeah. So, basically, you know how I started voice acting in English, and I still do. I started with voluntary stuff, then I did some paid work here and there, and now I've finally come to the point where I can announce that I am the Dutch voice of the sun and the official Dutch dub for the Amazing Digital Circus.
That's so cool.
That is awesome. Is that why your status on Discord is the sun right now?
Yes, you noticed.
Is it? Yeah, it's a sun with a smiley face.
It's a sun with a smiley face because, I'm so excited. Yesterday we watched the premiere for episode 3.
Wow. Wait, so this is the official dub?
Yeah. So, so for the Dutch dub, I should say, the sun shows up in the promotional content that happens right after the pilot episode. But it's a really fun scene, and I got to be like, well, that sun is like, I think the sun is supposed to be like a little bit too loud and a little bit irritating or something. But I embraced that, and I thought that was just so fun. Wow. So I clipped that part and I posted it on social media, which is why I told you not to check out my Twitter. Because that's on there now. And otherwise you would have been spoiled.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. That is a huge production to land. I'm very happy for you. And to be in your native tongue, no less.
Yeah.
That is really exciting.
Especially that. Yeah, I was...
sorry, I just remember you were saying that before. You were trying to do more like productions in your native language.
Yeah. And it's the fun part that like things are really starting to take off in my own native language, even though I didn't start doing voice acting in Dutch. So I was also talking yesterday to some of the other cast members. I said like, the fact that a little while ago I was a little bit worried for the future of my language, basically, because whenever people come over to the Netherlands, everybody's always very nice to people from like other nationalities. But we start to talk a lot more English than we start to talk Dutch. And it comes to the point where people from my age, they start to use like a lot of English words in their vocabulary, which is like totally normal because that happens in all languages, that some English words come in and hang around, you know. But some people actually think that the official language in the Netherlands is English because we speak it so well.
Yeah.
And then I thought, dang, I really don't want my language to just like kind of like disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
So it makes me so proud that I can now do something that's in my own language and I can be so passionate about it.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
so great.
Oh, that is awesome.
Absolutely.
That is seriously awesome. And yeah, that's, I guess, kind of, I never thought about that. That's an interesting and I guess like culturally circumstantial kind of worry to have, you know, because like the Netherlands, I mean, it isn't like the biggest European nation, you know, by any means. It's like, it also isn't really one of those languages, Dutch, that you think of as being like widely spoken, I guess, outside of there too, right? Like, I mean, like even like when I was in Pennsylvania, there's like this dialect called Pennsylvania Dutch. And I was like, oh, Dutch. But apparently they call it Dutch, but it's actually more German than anything. And it's, and through like a bunch of like cultural...
it's Dutch because they're from Deutschland.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that just like culturally got like passed down and down and down until like in English they just said, you know, Dutch, but they meant Deutsch.
Yeah, exactly.
So
people
like
often confuse German and like and Dutch often because it kind of sounds like each other.
Yeah.
I can't speak it myself, but when somebody starts talking German to me and I listen very attentively, then I can kind of understand what they're talking about, but I can't respond to them. So.
Yeah. I wonder if it's kind of like a like
a Portuguese Spanish.
I was
type
thinking
of thing.
like Afrikaans and well, I think that one.
Well, Afrikaans and Dutch as well.
And Dutch. Because like I'd seen
Afrikaans and Dutch.
Yeah, because I'd seen an interview with Charlize Theron, and where the interviewer spoke Dutch and she spoke Afrikaans, and they were able to communicate with each other.
I also have a really good friend of mine who is from South Africa. And I remember when we would meet up in the Netherlands, then he would also be like doing pretty good to like talk to people and like just conversing and stuff. Because he has Afrikaans and that sounds so close to Dutch. So he followed a couple of Dutch lessons and maybe some of the grammar wasn't like perfect, but still you can really go far with that.
Yeah, you can actually communicate. That's so fascinating how that works, though, where like technically they are different languages, right? Like by the definition of languages, like they're not just dialects, they are entirely different languages. And yet there's so much overlap that people could pretty readily understand each other through them with some effort. So that's really fascinating. I mean, like you obviously have done most of your voiceover to date, like in English, and now you're kind of going into this big production in Dutch. And I know the last time we spoke, you said you'd be getting a lot more practice in voice acting in Dutch with other local performers and things like that. So it sounds like that I guess kind of goal of being able to do more in your language and to kind of do the work of preserving.
It's really taken off.
Yeah, preserve it is kind of taken off. And that's really awesome to see.
Yeah, and also to do with that, I'm always looking to like learn more and better myself and make myself more skilled, I suppose, in voice acting. So a little while ago, I was looking for basically some type of studio or classes or something like that. And recently I found a studio in the Netherlands that they basically host like group lessons, but also private lessons. So while I'm studying right now in communication, I decided that I'm also going to be following kind of like a course or education in voice acting as well on the side.
Ooh. Which I feel like goes kind of hand in hand too.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on...
Oh, definitely. And luckily it's not 5 days a week that I have to go to a communication. Sometimes there's like one day where I don't have a schedule. So then there's room to basically work on assignments or spend your time like however you want. But the only thing was that she was booked full until halfway November, so I have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be following private lessons at Studio Oranjeoord is what it's called.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's some nice tutelage.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, upskill yourself.
Yeah. Because the reason why I wanted to do it is because I started this kind of like just winging it is what I would say.
Yeah.
I started doing
just like
it
with intuition and like feel.
Yeah. And like we talked about the last time I was here, I loved acting and singing and dancing since I was young. And I did have some experience in that. But I've never really had any voice acting classes. So I thought, you know what? I'm really sure that there's stuff that I don't know yet that, you know, somebody can teach me who's already so skilled and has been in the field for such a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because you're talking about how you're studying for communication right now. You mentioned to us briefly in the pre-show that you are kind of, would you say you're studying full-time now, or?
Yeah. So basically, I started in September. Previously, I was working. Then I decided I wanted something more. I wanted to keep learning. Like I said, I want to keep like expanding my knowledge and making my world bigger. And I thought, you know, I want to do more. I don't want to keep working at the same place for the rest of my life, I suppose. That's kind of what it felt like. So I thought, you know, let's just go on to like some school websites and look on like what studies that they offer. And I saw communication and I thought, hey, that sounds like it could really fit with me. And then I did some test study days and like with open days where you can go to school and ask questions and kind of like check it out. I realized that communication, well, not only does it also fit very well with voice acting, but I was just already interested in that topic.
Especially since like you've kind of got this personal, like, I'm trying to think of a different word than like vendetta, but like you're trying to like, you know, preserve your culture and you're trying to do all this stuff, like having that communication background to be able to do that and be able to like approach that in that way.
Yeah, I already love chatting and contacting people and meeting new people, making new friends. And then to kind of have this course in like communication and how does it work and how do you get a message from you, the sender, to the person who's going to receive that message with the least amount of confusion on the line as possible, because there's always going to be a little bit of it. I'm never going to be able to just drag like Harry Potter like want this thought out of my head and put it into your head instead, and you exactly know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so I'm studying for 5 days a week. I'm not working while doing that, but I'm focusing on voice acting as well on the side.
Awesome. Yeah, so I guess you kind of got into a little bit of what I was going to ask further, of like what kind of made you interested in communications. But yeah, that's such a fascinating, I guess, kind of realm of study in general, because it's such a just core part of everyday life, but also at like a higher level is also such a core part of business and politics and just like basically all the
Pretty
things
much everything.
that move things in the world. It's such a
anytime two humans are involved.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's very fascinating. I'm curious. I mean, if you don't mind getting into kind of a little bit more technical detail of how that works, because you're talking about how you're doing that like full time, you're not working. I don't know too much about how this is in the Netherlands. Like, how does that work for education wise? Like, is there a lot of support for being able to be like a full-time student? Do you have to like go through like financial aid and stuff like that to be able to do that? Or
so it depends on you have the option to live alone as a student, and then you kind of have to have some type of job on the side. I'm just fortunate enough that I still live at home with my parents, so I don't have to worry too much about like paying rent or getting groceries or stuff like that. There are some things that help you though, that the government kind of like gives you. We have like a public transport pass basically, which allows you to travel because I have to travel by train for half an hour to go to school. And those tickets, you know, if I have to pay every day, that can rack up to a pretty high amount of money.
So you have like a student pass?
Yeah, so basically whenever you start to study, you have the option to get either a week pass or a weekend pass. So that means that you can travel basically on their costs. And the only thing that you need to do is basically finish your studies in a set amount of years. And then they basically, I don't know the correct translation, but they basically give you, or they grant you that amount, like, you don't have to pay them back.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like a reimbursement kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. Okay, that's fascinating. I mean, that's a whole thing in and of itself. I guess Europe in general, from what I understand, has really good train transit. You know, like that's something that we don't really have here in the States. And I know a lot of people who go overseas become very jealous about how easily you can get where you need to go by train in places like Europe or even parts of Asia.
Yeah, just the infrastructure it's just way more advanced simply because of the fact that they've had more opportunities to build new things. And they don't have to, like in the US, like if you were to build new, you know, railroad tracks, a lot of it is you have to tear down the old ones, the old rickety ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in Europe and a lot of places like that, it's all the newest stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be moments where like some accidents happen and then you're late at school because something happened to the lines or whatever. But that's just, you can't do anything about that. Nobody is to blame for something like that.
I remember one time, I just remember when Rose was going to TAFE. She has the same thing where she has a school pass where like they think they have the cost to go on like trains and buses. There was like this one period of time where we had to take like an alternate route because the trains were down because of strikes. And I was like, oh, well, that's just a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's striking season or something.
Yeah. It's also like whenever there's a strike with the trains, and my boyfriend actually lives away from me by 2 hours. So usually I go by train, but then if the train is canceled or if there's strikes or something, then I have to go by bus and it takes a lot longer to get there. But still, I get there in the end.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, that's so fascinating to me because, I mean, the US is like so geographically huge by comparison to so many countries, and yet we do not have good train infrastructure at all. And yeah, that's always been kind of interesting to me. I know our current Secretary of Transportation is like working on changing that, but then we're going to like
apparently working very hard.
Yeah, working very hard. I'm sure it's not an easy feat, but at the same time, we're also probably about to undergo administration changes. So we'll see, because it is an election year and we have not talked about that on the podcast season so far. But I mean, literally everybody else is talking about it. It is always a tumultuous time in the US, especially these days when it is an election year, as I'm sure everybody all over the planet hears about when we are in an election year.
Especially these days.
Especially these days.
It's the event, right?
I know. Oh my goodness.
Everyone's holding their breath. It's going to go one way or the other and nobody's going to be happy.
No.
But yeah, like I had a coworker as well who is in the Navy. I hear a lot of his stories of like going to other countries and stuff. And he talked about how he really enjoyed his time being in Japan, actually, and living there for a while on the Navy base. But he talked about how you could pretty much get anywhere in Japan on trains. And that was pretty much like his primary form of transportation when going like between towns and cities. But yeah, that's very interesting. That's really cool that y'all have that.
And they've got the bullet train too.
They do. Yeah. Japan is fancy.
Yeah, I have this dream of going to Japan one day. I really want to visit there once in my life at least.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I just think that the culture is so interesting, and I would really love to see that in person and kind of experience that in a very, careful and polite way, because I really don't want to like offend anybody or do anything wrong, but I really want to experience what it is like to be there and just like cultural stuff like matcha tea ceremonies or kimonos or temples, visit those and know how to properly do that to show your respect, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I may end up visiting one day just because
I know.
Yeah. Haley, my wife, is a huge lover of Japanese culture. She also speaks the language. She minored in Japanese in college. And so she's very, very much enamored with Japan, and she definitely wants to visit one day. So I will probably go with her one day on that pilgrimage. She actually had the chance to, but was not able to because she had an internship with a Japanese company when she was in college. Wow. And it fell through because right when she was supposed to leave, the pandemic hit.
Oh.
Yeah.
That blows.
It really crushed her.
I'm going to make you guys very jealous.
Oh, no.
Well, I'm not. Rose has been to Japan on a school trip, and that's just something that happens here because we're like 2 hours away.
Are you kidding? Oh,
yeah. And I'm pretty sure her brother is going to go. I think next year her brother's going to Japan as well.
Dang, that's so cool.
I love how that's just
a thing that they do.
That's just a normal school trip. Just fly all the kids out to Japan.
Well, I think it's for like the Japanese like class, like when they take the Japanese elective, all those students go to Japan on like a culture trip.
That would be the dopest language elective field trip ever.
Yeah, but like you think about it, like we're basically 2 hours away from Japan. Like it's not that far of a trip for us now. Like you guys have to go halfway across the globe.
Yeah,
we can take the boat if we wanted to.
Just ferry yourself over.
Wow, so cool.
That is.
So I'm definitely I know for a fact I'm gonna be going over there at some point. And I've got a lot to say about Japan, but I think that's for another podcast.
Neither.
Otherwise, we'll be talking about Japan all day.
I mean, yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't think about that. It's easier for you to get to Japan than it would be to come back and visit me again.
Dang,
so much easier. I can go to Japan, back, pick up something that I forgot at home, and back to Japan easier than it would be to go to visit.
Yeah, that is depressing when you put it that way.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious about the projects that you two are working on, because I also haven't spoken with you two for a long time.
That's true.
And we've been talking about me, now I want to talk about you.
Yes, turn it on the hosts. But no.
Yes.
I mean, life has been crazy lately. I think for both of us, like there has been so busy just personally. I think it's fair to say I've still been working on projects. It's just like the pace has been very moderated just because of life. I mean, but that being said, things have been kind of...
Moderated is one way to put it.
Yeah,
yes.
Moderated is the word I choose to use. And like, obviously, huge transition point this year, right? Getting married, moving halfway across the country. Yeah. That was all a lot of work, starting a new job, you know, going through the process of job hunting and starting a new job here. And that's all been a lot. And then on top of that, moving to a new place over the summer. And so now we're finally in our own place. And it's all been a very busy year. Thankfully, things have kind of settled down and calmed down a little bit since then. We're kind of getting into a little bit more of a routine. I've got a nice home office set up now in which I can do my work. And
nice.
I really like it. It's very, very nice. It's the reason I could do things like this and not worry about waking Haley up because she sleeps in. Got my own little room that is designated the workroom. But yeah, it's really been nice getting all of the personal stuff settled. But now that things are kind of settled a bit more in routine, I've definitely been doing kind of nose to the grindstone on creative work as much as I can. Of course, Identity Season 2 is still in the works. Although I haven't been able to do as much on that. We're running into some production snafus, but as soon as those are resolved and getting like all of the assets we need together, that's gonna fire right back up. But in the meantime, I've been mostly working on a lot of writing, working on a lot of tabletop RPGs. We're starting a home game finally. We've got, which is fascinating because...
Which I am so jealous of.
I've been wanting to have a good home game that is consistent for a while. And it's never been able to take off. But here, when we've got all of Haley's friends here. I mean, that's the thing is as soon as we like announced that we were doing a home game and started putting out feelers, we quickly became overwhelmed because we quickly found that there are way more people who are looking to play D&D than we have chairs in our apartment. So
I'm telling you, Raph. West Marches.
I'm telling you. But like, I want to do something narrative, man.
You can do narrative. And it's a different
podcast. We talked about D&D too much last time. So, but yeah, I mean, we have so many people in the queue and we're just trying to figure out how we can do this. Yeah. I mean, we basically can seat 7 players essentially, excluding me as a DM. And so it's just like, we have way more than that of people who want to play. And then I have a coworker who's also looking for a game. And it's like, there's just so many of them. D&D nerds are everywhere. They just come out of the woodworks as soon as you say you're starting a game.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And so yeah, a lot of that I think both Lauren and I are deep in prep on different D&D campaigns that we're going to run as actual play shows on our channel.
Yeah,
coming next year. So I think that's really been a lot of our focus as well. We've managed to...
We have to figure out which one comes first.
That's the issue now, because that was up in the air for a bit. For a while, it was like I was able to go harder on prepping mine because it felt pretty certain that one was going to come first. Now it's less certain than it was at that time, just because your situation has improved a little bit. But that being said,
we got money.
Yeah. We've managed to cast Dakota, in both of those. So that's been really fun. We're definitely going to be playing with him a lot more. But yeah, basically, I think that has really been a lot of our focus lately. And of course, doing the podcast and all sorts of other writing. But yeah, I've been trying to focus a little bit more on writing stuff, really, because I guess I'm kind of remembering that was my first love, and it's still something that I want to make my career in. And I have a novel that is finished that I would love to try and publish sometime next year. It's looking more likely that I'm going to be going the self-publishing route. But either way, it's still just a goal of mine to get that story out there. Also, I've been working as a copy editor on Haley's writing because she has one published book and she has another one that she's working on. And so I've been doing a lot of copy editing for her because I love doing that stuff and she does not.
Oh.
So yeah, a lot of writing stuff, I guess, on my end. Because really, nice. D&D and tabletop RPGs, that's mostly writing, I think, is a majority of the job of it in terms of like the actual work. So really, I feel like writing has been kind of my focus lately. I don't know if there's anything else you want to give an update on.
I wish I had more exciting stuff.
Yeah, Lauren.
I wish I had more exciting stuff. Because I'm also in the coming out of that transition period where, coming to Australia. I recently, like I told you again in the pre-show, I'm now a permanent resident of Australia, which means I had to buy the visa, which there went most of my money.
Ooh,
and visas are expensive. And then I was like, I've got a car now. I got my license first, and then I got a car. So there went the rest of my money.
I also, just as an insert for the podcast, I can't believe you got your driver's license in Australia before you got your driver's license in the US.
It's dumb.
Which it's dumb. For the record, is way more difficult to get a driver's license in Australia.
I don't have that's the thing. I don't have my driver's license yet. I have my driver's provisional license, which is like this weird middle license that doesn't exist in the US, which should. It really, really should. I like the way the system is. I just hate that I have to do it. It's cool for everybody else. If you're 16, you need to do it. I'm twice your age.
Oh.
But no, it's pretty great. I'm mostly in the stage now where I'm just nose to the grindstone trying to get my like coffers back into healthy shape so that I can start doing more artistic stuff and spending money on actual like good production. But because most of my funds that were set aside for specific goals have now been used. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They've gone to the crown.
Yeah. Actually, they kind of did.
Literally.
They kind of did. Wait a minute. I'm in a Commonwealth country.
You're a peasant.
Man.
No.
Man, I was in the land of the free.
You've gone back to the peasantry.
I'm one step closer to Britain. Oh, no.
Oh.
Well, watch out for ladies and lakes.
Well, that would be a good thing, though, right? Because I hear that's a good system of government.
I mean, yeah. I mean, when you find the lady in the lake. But no, the Britons got to it first.
King of the Britons.
Yeah. So that being said, I guess, yeah, that's mostly is the struggle, I guess, is where we are.
I am knee deep in the struggle. I'm working 2 jobs that I'm getting paid for. 4 if you include the ones I'm not getting paid for. 5 if you include the one that I might be getting in a couple weeks. So I'm busy.
Okay. I thought I was busy with my studies and then also hanging out with friends and then voice acting and you're definitely more busy.
Replace the voice acting, the hanging out with friends, and the having fun. Replace that with jobs.
Oh no. But I mean, that's definitely a struggle. But I mean, there's a fair bit of struggle to go around. But I think as far as competitions go, you might win, but still. To
be fair, I do not have to be doing this much working. Like just on my one primary job, I'm making a pretty decent wage, but I'm trying to speed run my way out of this hole. So I'm trying to get to financial security as quick as possible.
Yeah, I think that's the way you phrased it on another podcast episode, is you're speed running financial security, which is, I guess, a thing you can do, apparently.
Yeah.
It sucks, but it
I
can
got personal best on the second job split.
Oh, that just reminded me, in my studies, we also have this class, and it's called personal growth. Mm-hmm. And apparently on the educational level that I'm studying right now, studies love to do stuff with your personal growth and, where do you see yourself and stuff like that. But I have actually really learned a lot from that class already, even if it has just been a couple of weeks. Also with the writing that I have to do for communication, because we have to write a blog at some point. I decided to kind of embrace that personal growth bit and write about an experience that I've had as a young woman who's experienced a burnout because of the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
Which was also one of the reasons why I started thinking hey, do I actually want to study and do something else, or do I want to keep doing this? Because while I had wonderful colleagues, I don't do very well with stress, I've learned. And
it was a pretty stressful environment.
Yeah, it's just when you're working in medical care, so many people want so many things from you, and there's also a lot of emotion in that work as well. People are calling because they're worried or maybe angry or sad or so you have to be really delicate with the way that you talk. Also what you tell people, if you call people or if you tell people, I will call you back at the end of the day, and you don't, people will get kind of offended. I mean, I would too, because I'm hey, we decided to do this, right? Why didn't you call me back? But that to say, because of that burnout, I learned that while I'm not very good at telling people what my limits are, in the sense that I want to help people so much that I kind of forget about myself sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, at some point I was kind of forced to learn myself, or to teach myself, hey, Sophie, you can't keep doing that. At some point, that's going to do more harm to you than it's going to be worth doing good for somebody else. So yeah, I had a long time, because I was already planning before I was having these troubles to start studying, that when I quit my job, I had this time to think. And yeah, I just learned a lot about, if you don't tell people where your limits are, at some point, your body, your brain will tell you. Right. Even if you don't know where they are exactly. Then you'll know. Yeah, you'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very important lesson to learn, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, because burnout is a very real thing, and also boundaries are very helpful things. Interpersonally, as well as, I guess, intrapersonally, just within yourself, of having clear boundaries with yourself of what you can and cannot do. And,
Yeah.
And then that goes to external boundaries of like being able to communicate that to others and be forthright without being, and I guess being stern without being rude. And
Exactly.
like, being able to stick to that. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a very interesting story and a very interesting lesson, I think, for everyone to learn, because as somebody who also like has had some experiences of burnout, that's something that kind of, I guess, creeps up on you. Like you said, you don't know sometimes until you find out, right? Until you push yourself too hard. And then, then you know your limits, and then you realize that's something that you need to account for. Is you need to account for yourself and how you're doing before you can really take care of anybody else or do the work that you need to do.
Yeah, for me, it happened a little bit strangely because I noticed that I was having some stress, but I kind of put it on. It was my very first job. I'm very young. I want to impress everybody and show that, I can do things well, and I think it's important. And that stress I kind of pushed away to the point where when I was so stressed to go to work with just the thought of going to work in the morning, that I was like, wow, why is this washing over me all of a sudden? But technically, it wasn't so random or so sudden. This had been building up for quite some time. I almost worked for 3 years where I was working.
Oh, wow.
So that definitely learned me a lot.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I asked, is how long you spent at that job. So 3 years, is a good amount of time. And I have also found that that's usually like a good signal of when you're not, I guess, at a place that you should be, is when you dread going to work in the morning. Like, I have found that like when you get that signal, like that is your body telling you that this isn't for you, at a certain point, because it's like, it's one thing, like there's a certain amount of, I don't wanna, that I think everybody experiences at a job.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
But when you're having a panic attack.
Yeah, there's a difference between I don't wanna and it's like I dread going into work. And I think being able to recognize that difference is like an important part, because like I don't wanna, you can push through. I'm dreading this is unhealthy for you.
Yeah, if you push through dreading, that is not good at all.
Yeah, because like one is just an emotional, like you said, I don't want to, but the physiological, like, if your heart rate changes and like you're starting to like feel your body's like physically shutting down and trying to stop you, that is something that you shouldn't push forward. You shouldn't push through. That is a sign, as opposed to just an emotional uncomfortability.
Yeah, and I also think, I won't go too much into this part, but I feel like sometimes people have been working in whatever field that you work in. I'm talking about kind of like more elderly, more experienced people that work there. They sometimes have the assumption that young people don't want to work.
You hear that all the time.
Yeah. I think it really depends on your perspective and your understanding of the other person. Because, for example, in the Netherlands right now, the situation with housing isn't very great. Houses or rent or buying a house is very expensive, and there aren't a lot of houses. So we don't really earn enough money in order to buy a house. So you go to your job, you don't really get paid enough to really, make a living for yourself. And I think it's totally fine that people then say, hey, I don't want to work if this is the way that I'm going to be dealing with things and how my life is going to look like.
Yeah, and I feel like that's I think there's an amount of that's like a generational thing too, because, I mean, maybe it's just like global economic trends. The American dream used to be like such a big thing, and it feels like, obviously, the States has experienced similar changes economically, where like owning a house is such a far-fetched idea for a lot of people our age nowadays, and even in the States. And to the point that like people with very good jobs even can like basically never have the prospect of owning a house. I mean, that's kind of sad on one end, but it's also, to your point, it's not really, it's hard for young people to feel encouraged about that. I think that like, and to be motivated by that, because maybe for a handful of generations, that was a very real possibility. But like the world has kind of changed since then. Even renting a place can be extraordinarily difficult. And like buying a house is just so far-fetched to so many people below the age of like 40, in this day and age, unless you're making like really, really good money, in which there are fortunate few that do.
Yeah. And that's just like like as time moves forward, as people get older and as generations have, different similar like economic problems that everyone has to deal with, as a time like between those generations increases, like the boomer generation now is 3 or 4 generations removed from the Gen Z generation now. So like completely different. Like they might understand a little bit of where millennials are coming from, or the silent generation, because that's the one that directly came afterwards. So like, oh yeah, I can see where that's coming from. 3 or 4 generations removed now, it's like I have no idea what's going on. I remember I was listening to the radio, and there's this one radio host, because I've listened to the radio at work. It's factory work. They have the radio on. Right. And this dude had the audacity, and I don't know who this person was. I think he was just like a random like a guest presenter, because as far as I know, like I haven't heard him else since on the radio. But he was like, oh yeah, because in Australia, we have similar housing problems. Like it's really bad. There's a predicted housing, if not crash, soft oof, but yeah, it's getting pretty bad. Like the government is now like doing a whole bunch of like stuff to try to get more houses, physically build like more houses and put them into the market. But there's also that they're doing this thing where they're telling landlords and like people who are renting out to ease up on restrictions for who can rent, right? So like they're saying like they're now going to enforce. What's the best way to put this? It used to be that you can prevent somebody from renting in your place because they own a pet. It will no longer be that way. Right. So if you own a pet, that's not immediate grounds for not being able to rent. You have to have a reason that pets aren't allowed. For example, if there's like an elderly population or like something like that. But that's just like if you are a landowner, you can't just say no pets allowed. There has to be a reason no pets are allowed. And this dude was going off on that rule for some reason. He was like, as a landowner, I don't understand this rule. Young people aren't unable to get housing because they own pets. It's because of this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, literally the only thing stopping me and Rose from owning an apartment right now is the fact that we have pets. Literally the only thing.
Wow.
Literally the only reason is the fact that we have pets, and the only places that are affordable don't allow pets.
Oh, wow.
So when you talk about like a generational dysfunction, like that was like one of the clearest, like you have no idea what's going on, old man.
Yeah.
Over here, they have decided on a sort of point system, because people who are renting houses are raising the prices to such incredibly high prices that it's not even funny anymore. They decided that somebody will come by the apartment or the building and then basically kind of like put scores down. So if there's maybe 1 or 2 bathrooms, how many bedrooms there are, how many sinks, etc., you will get a certain amount of points. And within that point range, you are allowed to ask for this much money for rent, which I think is very good, because otherwise they know that so many people are looking for a place to rent that they will just up the price because somebody will pay it eventually, because they're so desperate.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, landlords historically have just been such an exploitative profession, right? And it's something that, because a home is something that, like, it's one of our people's core needs, right? Like, it's on Maslow's hierarchy of needs to the point it's so core.
Shelter.
You need shelter, and humans crave a home. And landlords historically have been so exploitative of that fact, right? Like the traditional business model for being a landlord, maybe not the traditional one, but the biggest like profit driving one is just like the act of like driving up rent prices and then like flipping your property, right? Selling it to another company and then like making a huge profit that way. But it's like that is literally a business model that only serves the landowners, right? It doesn't serve the consumers. It doesn't serve the people who actually have to live there. In fact, it's horrible.
Well, it's commodifying a basic need.
Yes, it's commodifying a basic need. That's a good way of putting it. And that is, there's something that just feels, I don't know, icky about that. That's like
morally reprehensible.
Yeah, some would say morally reprehensible for sure. And I don't know. I don't know what to do about that, except we are all here complaining.
Want to know what's even worse? I'm going to make you feel terrible now because I don't know how it is elsewhere, but in the States at least, most of the time your landowners aren't even a person.
Yeah.
So the people who own a lot of land now aren't like people. Your land is lumped into a group of like bits of land, and they're not. There's not a person who's looking over that. There is either like a corporation or a bank or something like that who is now deciding and looking at all of these bits of land with zero context of what's going on and saying, that's what this is worth. This is how much the price is going to be. And that's it. If you want to, like, there's a bunch of people right now who are trying to take control out of these fake landlords, like for lack of a better term, to, give it back to actual people. So if you wanted to have something done to your lands, like say stuff needs to get fixed, you can talk to a person instead of like emailing a random bank who owns that bit of land that you happen to live on.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, I feel like this is kind of a generational thing because we just hit 3 different countries' housing problems and in one conversation. It really feels like it might be. But anyway, we've raged against capitalism too much on this episode. It's time to start winding down.
Give me more time.
No, Lord.
Sure.
Put it down.
Let's end on a high note, right?
Well, here's a high note. I was looking up. I'm not too familiar with the Amazing Digital Circus. I'm really excited that you landed a role on the dub there. I was looking it up over the course of this episode. Apparently it is an Australian
So I'd heard of
production. It is an Australian
show. I saw that. So I'd heard of it. I don't know anything about it, but I've heard of it.
Apparently it's inspired by the short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, and so now I'm very interested in it.
Well, you can watch it on YouTube or on Netflix.
Yay! Can we get the Dutch dub on Netflix?
Yes, you can.
Ooh, that's cool. I want to do that. You're my friend on Netflix.
Oh my goodness. We could say we will be able to look at our friend on Netflix.
I'm super excited.
That is awesome.
I just, the only thing is that unfortunately the promotional content isn't on Netflix because, Netflix is series. Right. So if you want to see the part where I voiced, then you can check out the YouTube channel. But still, you can feel free to watch it on Netflix because the other actors are also amazing.
Wait, so your character only appears in the promotional content?
Yes.
Okay.
So far, yes. Okay. I don't know what the plans are for the future, so I'm just crossing my fingers hoping that she'll show up again.
Well, still, you got your foot in the door for a pretty amazing opportunity, it sounds like. It sounds like you're working alongside a great cast on a huge production that is, a kind of internationally known show. So I'm really happy for you. It's really exciting, and I love vicariously celebrating my friends' wins, which I've been doing a lot of lately, but more on that later.
And I definitely also think that voice acting is also a lot of networking. I think a lot of voice actors will tell you that. So exactly like you said, when you have your foot in the door, you start talking with people, you get to share so many things with other people, you work together, so it opens a lot of doors. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. The entertainment industry is all who you know.
Yeah, a lot of it is. But that's the thing that is contrary, I guess, to popular belief. Sometimes that is something that you can exert some control over, right? Networking is a skill that you can develop. And of course, there are, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people who just, were kind of born with a silver spoon, so to speak, in terms of networking opportunities. There's, but that is still something that you can develop as time in your career goes on. And yeah, that's, again, it's just really awesome to see things pan out for good friends. I'm so happy for you. That is awesome. And I'm excited to see
I'm also super excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where your voiceover career goes from here, because I think you're also going places, and I'm just glad to have worked with you at the ground level.
Then you'll be able to say, yeah, I know her. I know her from the
I worked with her.
Chronicles. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew her when nobody else did. Y'all didn't even know.
I mean, it's true. You did know me like right from the start, I think. At least like.
I mean, it feels like all of those people who cut their teeth on TSC are really kind of going places. It feels like that was kind of the starting grounds for a lot of voice actors. But that being said, I think that's a good positive note to end on, as we have run out of our time. But thank you very much for joining us for another episode. Glad to have our second recurring guest, and hopefully we could do this again sometime.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I hope so too.
Yeah, well, thank you all very much for listening. This has been the Hypercube podcast. This show is mixed and edited by Raphael Pacheco, with original theme music by Mono Memory. Until next time, we'll see you all later. God bless.
Adios.
Bye.